It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. My guest today is CEO Ed Eiland. Ed serves as Vital Care Inc.'s Chief Executive Officer, and he leads the company with a vision of caring about every patient with an understanding that what they do is truly vital. Dr. Eiland received his Pharm.D from the University of Texas, and he obtained his MBA from Auburn University. Ed Eiland, welcome into the corner office.
Thank you for including me, Brant.
Well, it's great to have you. I'm looking so forward to hearing your story, and we like to get started a little bit with the early years, and maybe you can just tell me a little bit about where you grew up and, what your early family life was like.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I grew up in a small town in North Louisiana. I felt like I had strong family support from my dad, my mom, and then I have a sister that's 5 years older. We had an extended family that lived fairly close to us, so
awesome.
Very blessed to have had a strong upbringing, and North Louisiana was a great place to grow up.
Tell me about your parents and kind of their background, how they influenced your growing up in particular.
Sure. Well, both had strong work ethics. My dad is a dentist by trade, and he also does some farming, farms corn, cotton, and soybeans. My mother was a teacher, but then later in her career went back and became certified as a nursing home administrator, and actually worked as a nursing home administrator for quite some time, part of a group of nursing homes owned by her family. So,
right.
And my sister's actually a fifth grade school teacher.
Now, she was younger or older, your sister?
She was older.
Got it.
She's 5 years older.
Yeah, got it. So was she pretty involved in your upbringing as well, doing the babysitting chores, those types of things?
Absolutely. She and I still stay in touch frequently and are really close. So I'm pleased to have her as a sister and to still be close to her. And her husband and niece are definitely part of my wife and myself, our life. So
nice.
It's really a nice thing.
Tell me about some of the influences that your older sis, as well as your mom and dad, had on you growing up. What are some of those earlier memories or formative memories you have?
Well, we're always a close family. Made an effort to spend time together. So, had to organize. My mother originally was a home ec major, so she was a really good cook.
Yeah.
We had to organize lunches and suppers, and so I think that was good just to kind of have that foundation. My parents went to St. David's Episcopal Church in Rayville, Louisiana, and so they instilled that in my sister and myself, from an early age. So that was, foundational and really important, and it's been a big part of my life, going forward.
Yeah.
So I think there was good structure, just a ton of support, and so it was. It was always, and I was always really proud of my parents, who they were
right.
in the community, who they were among their peers, how they conducted themselves. So I can say I was very fortunate in that aspect, for sure.
Cool. How about any other early influencers, the who or the what, any particular sports or teachers that had an impact on some of those early years?
Well, absolutely. I played all the sports I could. I went to a small private school, and so I was able to participate in football and basketball and baseball. And you realize early on that you're not the biggest, the fastest, the strongest, but I played in football, played quarterback and free safety, and so I was able to participate and learn a team approach and to realize that, it takes all included to be successful towards working towards common goals and achieving those. And so, I really had some strong, childhood memories of competing in sports, and that's correlated into a lot of my work life with regard to just how I go about setting a goal and working the steps to achieve it.
Right. What about school? Were you a good student, Ed?
I felt like I was a good student. I really developed the skill to learn how to study and apply myself around my sophomore, junior year in high school, and that worked out well for college. Went to undergrad and received a BS in pharmacy from NLU in Monroe, Louisiana, and then went on to get my doctorate at University of Texas. And so it was foundational to start back in high school. As I worked through the first professional school and worked on the postgraduate training, it was beneficial to have had that understanding of what it takes to study and to apply yourself. And it was not always natural, and it was uncomfortable, and I was more at times being an athlete, but it was fortunate because, again, I had good support from my teachers. I had good support from my family, and so overall, yes, I mean my grades were good.
Yeah. What about outside of class? Were you involved in music, theater, school politics, anything of that ilk?
Yes, did student council and involved in several different sports, throughout high school, junior high and high school. As far as influential things, I always had a job during the summer. Always kept busy outside the school year, and so definitely stayed involved. And as far as influences go, I'm a pharmacist by training, so basically there were several pharmacists in the small community where I grew up, and they were influential. Just kind of I saw how they conducted their business, who they were in the community, what they did, that entrepreneurship nature, and it intrigued me. And so that's why I went into pharmacy. Now, as I went through my education, I started realizing that there's other things more to pharmacy than what I was just exposed to initially. But it was the beginning of getting into a career that I had a lot of different options.
What about entrepreneurial things when you were younger? Any of those were you involved with at an early age?
Bag groceries, certain summers as I was growing up, and I always enjoyed working around the farm, around the row crops, and getting involved, just being outside, and really a lot of that was influential because it taught me what I wanted to do as I got older, but also taught me what I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
So, but I always tried to have a job, to have a little extra money available to do the things I like to do.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I remember thinking that I really wanted to go into banking. That would be a great career, and I like money. This is high school thinking, right? And let me give something a try. And I think it was between my freshman and sophomore year, might have been sophomore and junior. I did a Bank of America internship in the Bay Area, and Apple was one of their clients. And this was back when Apple was private. So you think, wow, what a terrific opportunity. I hated it. It could have been the most boring thing I could have done, Ed. And, like you said, sometimes at an early age, and I think kids tend to forget this, it's not only figuring out what you like to do, sometimes the most valuable lessons are figuring out those things you don't want to do. And, kind of crossing those off.
I completely agree, Brent. I think that's a wonderful thought, and it was reiterated further in my career when I was doing my residency training at the Audie Murphy VA at University Hospital in San Antonio, and even before that, during Pharm.D rotations, you're on certain rotations, addressing certain patient population needs, and you figure out what your strength is and where you do not have much strength. And so it was literally a process of elimination, and it was obvious where I wanted to progress after receiving that training. So.
Well, it sounded like, going to college was a foregone conclusion, with both your parents being professionals, and studying pharma sounds like it was a predetermined path as well. Were there other influences in terms of deciding what you'd study in college at the undergraduate level?
There were. I was always close friends with a a guy down the street. His dad was a pharmacist, and anytime I would come in their home, he would stand up, shake my hand, acknowledge me. I could tell he was just generally happy by nature, and he had a good family life. And so I always, you look at that when you're young and you aspire for something similar. So it really wasn't about the career so much. I think it's just his personality as I know him currently now. But those things are influential. And so I think that it began that path. And it was, it's a prayerful thought. But as I was thinking about what I wanted to consider, you're talking about banking. I had a thought about accounting, and I thought about pharmacy. And pharmacy school was just more intriguing, and so that's what I started down that path, and it's worked out.
Yeah, cool. And did you go right on to achieve your master's and doctorate after undergrad, or was there some time that you worked in between?
I actually finished my doctorate right after I got my pharmacy license, and then I went on to do postgraduate training to get my doctorate in pharmacy and residency, but later, I guess it was 6 years later, I went back and got my MBA, and so there's all throughout my
you spent a lot of time studying, Ed.
We're learning. I tried to get the most out of it, and I realized in pharmacy there was the clinical patient care aspect, but I understood the business side of pharmacy and started gravitating towards that, and really. The reason I serve in this capacity now is because I like the medication piece, the patient care piece, but also I like the business of pharmacy and pharmacy practice.
What was that kind of first full-time job that you had once you finished your studies? Would that have been after MBA school, or was there a period?
Well, I was actually a clinical pharmacy and business supervisor when I went back to MBA school. My first real job as a practicing pharmacist was at Warm Springs Rehabilitation Hospital, which was a small hospital, but you were the only pharmacist there. So I worked with a lot of ortho residents, and so that was very gratifying. Also, I worked part time at Caremark Mail Order just to see what kind of a retail mail order business was like, and it was considered employment because I was paid a salary when I was at the Audie VA and University Hospital. So early in my career, I had pieced together several different jobs during my training, and then I spent 13 years at Huntsville Hospital in North Alabama, which is the 900-bed regional referral center before coming to Vital Care.
Got it. So looking at that period, what are some of the earliest leadership lessons you learned from bosses and mentors? And, kind of like that question around learning what you like and what you don't like. I'm sure you had bosses and mentors where you saw behavior and you said, that's not quite right, and learned lessons from there too. So no names are needed to be mentioned, but I'd love to hear from you, maybe positive as well as negative things you might have learned early on.
Sure, Brent. I think a lot of it was, truly a title doesn't grant respect. So, how do you treat your coworkers? How do you treat your team members? I learned early on, too, that, if you don't want to be criticized, don't say anything, don't do anything, and don't be anything. That it's just in the business world, people will be critical, and you have to understand that and keep your head up. And again, I kind of revert back to our earlier conversation about the fact that sports were instrumental in that, and realizing, what defeat looks like, and how do you accept it, and how do you move forward, and then what victory looks like, and how do you perform, and how do you conduct yourself, when you're successful. So, again, I was very fortunate to be around some extremely good leaders. So I really learned from all of them, and really the way I can give back is to take the best of their skills and try to integrate that into my day-to-day practice.
Right. Do you remember the first time you started managing people, Ed?
I do. It was most distinctly began managing residents within a pharmacy program. So they had finished pharmacy school, postgraduate year one. They had their first job, and I was their boss. So it was the day-to-day activity of having a group of people. It's kind of like a troops coming to you and asking, now how are we going to divide and conquer? How are we going to space out and help as many patients as we can? So just kind of realizing that it wasn't about me. And I could be getting ready for work and thinking of how I was going to plan my day and what I was going to be done to be productive. But I had to realize early on that in that capacity, that I was serving that when I showed up at work, the first thing I need to make sure is that everybody around me knew what their goals were, so and what we were going to try to accomplish as a team. So that was my first experience, and then I went on to manage pharmacists and technicians. And so,
tell me a little bit about maybe how your leadership style evolved over that time. Were there specific things that you learned from those direct management experiences and kind of the working with people? And again, good and bad behaviors are always good to hear.
I really have always, gone after the philosophy or kind of conducted myself to look at those the characteristics of being humble, hungry, smart.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find myself and it's something that Patrick Lencioni talks about, humble, hungry, smart in his book, but just having humility, not having to be pushed, but be self-directed and self-motivated, and then smart, just being more have emotional intelligence, realize how your comments can impact others.
Sure.
Those have always been kind of the pillars of what I've held myself to a standard, and also the people that I partner with to just assess yourself. Are you being humble? Are you being hungry? And are you being smart? And I've seen in my career, and talking about learning from others, is that I've gravitated towards in a leadership role, I typically hire the personality and I teach the skill, because I feel like so much the personality is what integrates culture. And again, those culture and the characteristics of being humble, hungry, smart are able to be identified oftentimes during meeting people and bringing them into your operation. And then at that point, definitely want them to have expertise and a skill, but that comes after all the other parts are in place.
Right. Now, you've been in Vital Care, about 6-7 years now? How long have you been in place?
5 years.
5 years.
5 years.
Got it. And how big's your team now in total?
So we have at the corporate office, we have about 85 individuals. We have throughout our Vital Care network, though, we have over 60 pharmacies in 24 states.
Wow.
So literally of everybody in Vital Care, there's probably 500-600 people.
Yeah.
So it's a lot to say grace over.
Yeah, big organization.
It's been a lot of fun, and again, our franchise pharmacies do a tremendous job, and our corporate office supports them well to take care of patients, because as I say, what we do is truly vital to patient care.
Yeah. And you're multi-state, right? You're throughout the Southeast?
We are. So we're in 24 states.
24.
And primarily concentrated in the Southeast. That's correct. Yeah.
How do you decide when it's time to micromanage or stay out of the way of the people, in your organization?
I try to follow my instinct.
Mm-hmm.
I do engage in a weekly one-on-one meeting with our leadership team members. Yeah. And I also do a brainstorming sessions, which are like skip level discussions with team members. But I really just follow instinct there. I feel like it's important to be able to delegate. I really trust the people that are around me, and I structured as such so that I have that the ability to delegate and feel like that the job will get done, and I can communicate effectively with the individual to make sure that they understand what our goals are. So I would just say that it's something that the weekly one-on-one is important, because that's a routine, and that gives space time for each of us to have discussion and to plan. And I can figure out, I really want individuals to be able to express, what they think is important, and be able to put in motion the processes they feel are most valuable for organization.
Right.
And so it gives me a chance to vet that out and understand what they're doing. But for the most part, allow them to have their brand, placed on what they're trying to accomplish.
And how big is your executive team? And do you have kind of the standard, organization by function, disciplinary function?
We do.
Yeah.
We have 8 people on our executive team, and we're divided up into different departments represented by operations, franchise development, financial services, revenue cycle, accounting, human resources,
right.
Information technology. So it's a typical org chart, typical structure
right.
with compared to most corporate offices.
Ed, share your thoughts about building a company culture.
A lot of building a company culture is just to be real with people. I'm someone that I like metrics, so I always use the phrase, measure not, improve not. And so what I strive to always do is to set forth goals and to explain the why of what we're doing. To really, as far as culture, to set up a community, to make it a career and to make sure that people feel like they have a purpose. And so I've always felt that we've got 10 goals at Vital Care that we all see real time. They're actually displayed on a TV on our blue wall, our Vital Care wall. We also have them on the internet, so you can look at them anytime. And so they're updated every second of the day. And basically, it's one of those situations where those are the things that guide us. But still, when you start talking about culture, you got to go back to those three characteristics I mentioned earlier of being humble, being hungry, and being smart. And so just evaluating our team and making sure that we're taking care of those things.
Yeah.
Treating people appropriately, and we're giving people respect, and we're explaining to them what we do as a company and how we do it, and the integrity in which we have. So, but that's really how I've thought about building a positive culture of Vital Care.
What would you say is most unusual or perhaps unique about the Vital Care culture?
What we do, oftentimes I say it, we do things that people don't want to do or don't know how to do. So we're somewhat behind the scenes. We provide the 3 S's of sales, service, and support. So we sell franchises, we service franchises, we support franchises. But several people on our team really do not ever meet a patient, but they are serving as advocates to get the patient's authorization approved or to help them obtain medication. So I think the unique part of that culture is that we're helping people, like I said, in 24 states that sometimes don't know we exist, but we're helping them obtain their medication prescribed by their physician.
Well, it could be life and death, right? I mean, it's life and death sometimes. I mean, you're right up there on the front line. Yeah. And do people embrace that? Do people understand that throughout the organization? How important it is that that customer service can be? Because selling cereal or milk is a very different arrangement than being there with their life preserving prescriptions.
They take a tremendous amount of pride in it, and that's where I feel like that our team members excel. But having humility and realizing that they might not be known, but they can be advocates for the patient. Being hungry enough to go and working with insurance companies and prescribers and referral sources. And then realizing that during these exchanges to just always work to be the bigger person and be polite and gracious and kind.
What do you look for, Ed, when you're making bets on the people you invest in and hire?
Typically when I meet with someone about coming on board, I often want to know if they've ever had a bad job, because I think that until somebody's had a bad job, they don't know what a good job looks like. And so it seems overly simplistic, Brad, I know, but
that's a good question.
At times, I feel like that many people can get out of their training and just have never experienced a difficult or challenging job. And so I feel like some of our most positive and productive employees are those that probably had a bad experience at some point in their career. So I definitely, I definitely look at that. I also look to see if the person can take on a team approach. Do they kind of get in their own swim lane and do their own thing and not really look out for others, And so I really think that the business we're in, it lends itself very well to being a team player. So I look, just see if they can do that. They can be part of a team. They can contribute to it, as a team member. I ask them practical situation questions. So depending on the situation, depending on the job description that we have in front of us and the position we're interviewing for, I just ask them how they would handle themselves in various situations, and I usually follow up with a question that just ask them, what has been something that you've faced in your employment in the past that was challenging, and then what have you done in your career that you're most proud of? And so going throughout that iteration of questions, I feel like that you get to know someone, and you get to see if they can fit into your culture.
Yeah, cool. In the 5 years you've been there, you've seen people come and go. And what differentiates those that stay in your organization?
Well, I talked about our goals and our metrics, and so goal number one is retention, because I feel like that you really have to keep talent on your team to achieve, because if it comes and goes too much and you lose people to attrition and whatnot, you can't achieve the goals you set out to achieve. And so life gets in the way, and so people move because of family members or job situations, significant others, etc. But I really think that the people that have stayed here and really excelled, the ones that came in, that learned our culture, and then wanted to be a part of something special, and really own something bigger than, be a part of something bigger than them, and so I think back earlier in my career working at the hospital setting, and it was something that I reflect back on in a real positive way. It's 13 years of working for an organization I was very proud of, and I always speak very highly of them. So what I strive is that when people, if they stay at VitaCare or if they move on to another opportunity, which we're always for positive turnover, but should that happen, I want them just to speak positively about the experience that they had here. Yeah. The people that have stayed with you through the years, and you know who they are, right? Those loyal folks who might have been there before you, but have only, kind of grown in their loyalty. What if someone ran into them at a cocktail party or at a church function, and they were asked, what's the real wow about VitaCare? What do you think they would say? I would say that the integrity, the fact that we exemplify integrity, that we're a very transparent team. So it goes back to the measure not, improve not, and have goals. So we know when we're not meeting the mark, and we know when we're exceeding it. So I really think it goes back to just a whole lot of integrity, and there's a whole lot of transparency. Yeah. Cool. Last couple of questions. You've been very generous with your time, but a couple more here. I know you get involved in interviewing, obviously, with people in your direct report. And my guess is you probably don't have a whole lot of holes in those organizations. Hope you could reach out to us in case you ever did. But let's say if you were interviewing somebody down the food chain, and your schedule was tight that day, you may only have 5 or 10 minutes, but your direct report really wants you to meet this person. He or she feels very strongly about them, and it's kind of meet the boss, meet the CEO. But you have a limited amount of time. If you did, what would you zero in on? What were the 1 or 2 key questions that you'd ask that person with just a limited amount of time on your end? I asked them how they came to know about our organization, and I really allow them the opportunity to talk instead of me talking at them, which in those situations people are often nervous. I understand, but I've found myself at times wanting to get a point across when really I want to just make myself available in that moment. And if there's something that they want to ask me, that I give them the opportunity to ask me the question. So I've worked even here recently to be more open-ended, and instead of say, do you have any questions, literally just say, what questions do you have? And begin with that. So I want to talk about what they find interesting, what they want to talk about, and really I think that everybody that's come to this organization and looked for a career and a job opportunity, they had a couple of key questions that they needed answers to in order to make that change in their life. And so, again, to be open and transparent, I think is to be quiet and to listen and see what what they have to say.
Yeah, that kind of demonstrates the servant leadership, which you haven't vocalized, but I can tell you're that type of CEO. And yeah, I think you work from the assumption, gosh, if he or she is so well liked by my direct report, they don't need any further scrutiny from me. Is that a fair assumption? You want to kind of give them an opportunity to learn more about you.
No, I think you say that very accurately.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good. Last question, Ed. And once again, we so appreciate your time. There's a lot of folks that will be listening to this podcast. Many of them, like yourself, will be CEOs, middle market, maybe checking out the competition. Others, of course, probably, and most of them have an aspiring desire to make it to the corner office themselves. And, those that are in the middle market or perhaps also in larger companies, what kind of career and life advice would you give to someone maybe a decade or two behind you, who has their eyes on the corner office and, wants to get where you are?
Always do right by your team. Always exemplify integrity. I think that it's really important to show that loyalty to your team. That's on a team, from a team dynamic. From a personal dynamic, you really have to be willing to put it all on the line. And I don't want to sound overly severe or dramatic about that, but there is, we talked about being humble, hungry, and smart. And so there's definitely a level of humility. But if you want to be a leader, if you don't want to be criticized, don't say anything, don't do anything, don't be anything. But to be a leader, you have to be willing to put it on the line and show that vulnerability. And I think that's challenging at times, but it's something that I've tried to apply in my career and had good success with. And so, it's worked well. But again, I go back to where I started with, always do right by your team, and show that integrity to them, and they'll show integrity to the people that they interact with. So, that would be my kind of two pieces of advice on a team level and then also on a personal level.
Wonderful. Well, Ed Eiland, CEO of Vital Care, thank you once again for your time today.
Thank you, Brent. It was a pleasure, and I appreciate you giving me your time.
All right. Have a good evening.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.